What's up, everybody? Happy Civil War release weekend, at least here in the US where I am. Today I'm going to be doing my player and basic card review like I do for every new set release. Reviewing these new cards primarily with a focus on how good these cards are, how they're going to help us win more games, not necessarily, just the fun or flavor of the cards, but, how are these going to impact our decks? What sort of decks can we build them in? How can we build around them to help maximize their value? With my usual framing of a top 5 list at the very end of the top 5 cards that I think will be the most influential from a power level perspective, but we'll talk about every new aspect and basic player card in this expansion. In previous videos, I have done a reprint segment as well. I'm going to skip it this time. Let me know if you were someone who enjoyed those reprint segments, but I think just to shorten up the video and my audience, I think skews a little more in the veteran side of the game as well, who probably knows some of these cards already. So let me know if you want me to do the reprints again, but there's kind of a lot in this pack, so I'm just going to skip them to try and save some time, help me spend some more time on the interesting new cards that we have. One thing that I actually want to say right at the outset here is that the card quality in this expansion is actually really, really high. There's going to be a lot of cards I'm going to talk about that are outside my top 5 list where you're going to think, oh, I thought that was going to be in the top 5, or you're talking about it as if it's such a good card. And yeah, that's true. There's actually lots of cards here that I'm excited to put in different decks, and I think they're going to positively contribute to our win rates. There's just, a lot of them, so only so many we can put in the top 5. But let me know, of course, if I miss any good use cases of these cards that you can see, and let's get into it here. So we'll start with the protection cards. So again, these are protection cards that did not make my top 5 that I'll do at the end, but no particular order here. So we'll start here with I Can Do This All Day. This is a 1-cost protection event that is a defense. It's a hero interrupt. When an enemy attacks, declare your hero as the defender without exhausting them. So this is a little different wording of an effect that we have seen before. So this could sort of work 2 different ways. If our hero is already ready, it would allow us, it's kind of like defending and then re-readying again. It's kind of like we defended without exhausting. So that's really similar in effect to Indomitable, which we've had in the game already. The, which one is it? Desperate Defense, maybe? The one where we get +2 defense, and then if we take no damage, we ready. So those are kind of the same, like 1-cost cards that let us ready after defending. That's kind of the same as defending without exhausting. We're not adding too much there that those cards couldn't already do. Where we do have a little bit of a niche is where we can now defend if our hero is already exhausted. If you kind of think about it, it's pretty rare for that actually to be the situation. Like if we're planning on defending multiple times during the villain phase, we could just play this on the first defense when we're already ready. If we would have to draw like an exhaustion or some other player card effect that exhausts us, and then draw an assault, which could maybe happen in like a multiplayer game. There could be other card effects that prevent us from readying at the end of the player phase or something. But that's a pretty narrow use of it. I think where this might offer some value is like, say you want to defend once per turn, and you'd like to defend twice in a particular turn, but you don't know if there's going to be 2 attacks. Maybe you're playing a solo game. So this could let you defend normally on the first attack. Now you have I Can Do This All Day as sort of a backup. If you need to defend again, you can play I Can Do This All Day from hand, even though you're already exhausted. Whereas if you played it, for your first defense, now you're spending those resources and maybe you don't get a second attack. And so, I don't know, it's some kind of several different niches put together here, but all in all, not a spectacular card, I think, and not much different from what we could do already. Next up, we've got Cuts Both Ways. This is a 0-cost protection event. It's a defense. It says when an enemy attacks, you gain Retaliate 1 until the end of the phase. This is just really, really low impact. Generally when we're defending, it's probably against a villain attack as opposed to a minion attack. When we defend a villain attack and we retaliate, we're retaliating it on the villain. And just damage on the villain is just not a super high value thing to do for the vast majority of the game. Even if we're defending, 3 or 4 times, say in the best case scenario, that's 3 or 4 damage on the villain. Like, I'm not actually that excited about that because it's just villain damage. If we want to do this for minion damage, that means that we're letting minions attack us, which means we're taking more damage than we otherwise would have had to take if we just killed those minions in the previous player phase. So not really seeing the use case for this that gets me excited. So I'm probably not, I might never play this card, to be honest. Next, we've got Excelsior. This is a 1-cost upgrade. Traits Kree, Skrull, and Weapon. So another weapon, which is interesting. It is restricted, and then response after your hero defends against an enemy attack. Spend an energy resource, deal 2 damage to an enemy. So this is very analogous to Yarnbjorn, the aggression weapon that lets us spend physical resources to do 2 damage after we attack. So we've got a little bit of a comparison there already. And this is the first card outside my top 5 that I actually like a decent amount. I think I'm going to play this a decent amount. Of course, there's this upfront cost of like 2 ER to get Excelsior in play. But then we just have this resource sink that, pretty efficiently converts a single resource into 2 damage. Never, we're not really getting away with too much. Maybe it never really causes us an excess of value above like to make up that initial cost to put it in. But giving us that flexibility down the line, is still definitely valuable. And as we can sort of leave a minion in play. Maybe we're playing a Change of Fortune deck. We can use this to kill the minion on the villain attack, but before the minion attacks. That's sort of a nice little thing. We might just look at our hand and say okay, I'm going to have an extra resource this turn. So after we do our defense, we throw a resource towards the damage. So, not a ultra powerful card or anything, but just a nice role player. Always good to have some little resource sinks. Teeny tiny amount of weapon synergy. I guess you'd need someone else at the table to play lock and load, or you might need to have a multi-aspect hero and use fuse a lot and stuff like that. But a pretty minor thing there, but just like a normal, I don't know, if you're planning to defend a lot, give you a nice little resource sink. Next up, we've got Defensive Conditioning. Another card I do like quite a bit here, but this is a 2-cost protection upgrade. Play under any player's control, max 1 per player. You get +3 hit points, and your hero gets +1 defense. So we're seeing a few of these conditioning cards coming out in the upcoming sets. They're kind of like the core set, stat buff cards. In this case, Armored Vest, stapled together with Endurance, which I forget what sets that's come out in, but maybe Miss Marvel. But, it's 1-cost card for +3 hit points. So this is, exactly those 2 effects stitched together. And if you were to do the ER calculation here, 2 ER for Armored Vest, 2 ER for Endurance, that would add up to 4 ER total, and we're getting both of those effects for only 3 ER. So a lot of people have been framing it this way. It makes it seem like a little bit of a discount, but honestly, the stat buffing cards, they aren't crazy efficient to begin with. 2 ER for +1 defense is kind of low impact. So this is more of just kind of, I think, a normal costing for this effect. And it's just a solid overall value. There's not too much hidden value here. You get +1 defense. So obviously you only really want to play this if you're a character who anticipates you're going to defend a decent amount of time. The +3 hit points is obviously a nice benefit. It's as a way to increase your hit points in hero form. It's always kind of nice. We do live in the ready for a fight age where we can flip down somewhat safely more often, but say we're just staying in hero form so we can defend for everybody. Giving us that +1 defense obviously helps the more we're defending, and then the 3 hit points as well. If we do have to take some damage here and there, it lets us stay in hero form a bit longer. So just a nice stitching together of things. I think there's some decks where you might play this and Armored Vest. You can get a little bit redundant when stacking your defense stat, because at some point you might just be defending for more than the villain is attacking. So, any additional defense buffs above that aren't super valuable. But certainly, if you only want to play one of those effects, I do think this is actually just an upgrade over Armored Vest, because it's 1 more ER for 3 more hit points. That's generally just a very good exchange. It's a 2-cost card, which, anytime we look at a 2-cost card, we got to think that, it gives us a bit more of a value out of the power of cards. If we play a deck that allows us to justify the power of protection, that's going to give us a little more free resource value over the course of the game. So I like it a little bit there compared to Armored Vest. And just a good all-around value card, right? Not going to make one particular broken, not going to make one strategy particularly broken, but just can add to a lot of different defense decks. All right, that is the last protection card that's outside my top 5. So now we got a few aggression cards here. First up, we've got Coup de Grace. This is a 2-cost aggression event, which is an attack. Defeat a non-elite minion with an upgrade attached. Ignore any one defeated abilities on that minion. All right, so this is giving another tool to the upgrades on enemies archetype. We saw a little bit in the Iceman hero pack. And a couple ways, something to be careful about when evaluating this card. So first of all, let's just think about it like 3 ER to defeat a non-elite minion. How do we feel about that generally? And I think we feel okay. Like there's, maybe the closest comparison is like Relentless Assault, which is 3 ER to deal 5 damage to any minion. That should be killing most non-elite minions of the game. Like maybe there's a couple Sentinels, maybe the T-Rex, but like really Relentless Assault should do basically the same thing. Now we have this added cost, but then also an added benefit. So the added cost is that the minion needs to have an upgrade attached. So one thing to be careful of here, if we're attaching an upgrade to them just so that we can play coup de grace, then that upgrade is like literally just adding to the resource cost here in a pretty negative way. But say that upgrade is something that just has inherent value on its own, like a suppressing fire. Now we still get the full value out of the suppressing fire when we use coup de grace to kill the minion, because it's like we paid the 1 ER for healing the 2 life. But if we compare to like a marked, this is a 0-cost upgrade that just gives attacks against the attached minion overkill. Like that's not adding anything to this whole equation. It's basically just adding another resource cost to coup de grace. So be a little bit careful there. Don't treat those as being free. Same with like a Bamf, putting a Bamf on the minion that you're just going to kill with this. Like Bamf didn't do anything there. So that made this sort of a 3-cost card. One card I should mention quickly here is the card Gatekeeper. So this is a 0-cost attachment that gives the attached minion +2 hit points. But then when that minion is defeated, we remove 4 threat from the main scheme. So coup de grace is actually really nice with this card because it's just saying defeat that minion. Usually the benefit of removing 4 threat from the main scheme is offset by the extra cost to deal with those +2 hit points on the minion. But in the case of coup de grace, those +2 hit points are completely irrelevant. So that turns Gatekeeper into basically a 1 ER card for 4 threat off the main scheme. So that's actually a really good combo. It does have the downside of, you've got a lineup drawing both coup de grace and Gatekeeper in hand, and having those, when there's a minion out for you to actually apply those two. It's a little bit tricky to line that up, and you increase your odds by playing 3 of each, but then you're going to get certain hands where you draw 2 Gatekeepers and no minions, or 2 coup de grace and no Gatekeepers. So got to be mindful of that. But Gatekeeper and Suppressing Fire, those are definitely the cards that we want to try to combo with coup de grace. But now we do get this benefit here of ignore any when defeated abilities on that minion. So obviously you're going to know when this is a useful effect. In some cases, like in Rise of the Red Skull box, we have a lot of these Hydra, what are they called? Hydra Patrol or Hydra Guard, Hydra Soldier minions that deal an encounter card when defeated. So just straight up, this helps us like answer an extra encounter card, which is really ridiculous, insane value. Someone like, I think like Uluk in the Enchantress scenario, when defeated, like Enchantress attacks or something, like very, very high ceiling in certain matchups against certain minions. But, a lot of the time, I think on average, it's not going to matter. So this is one of those, I might consider it kind of like a side deck card. I often like to keep like a little 5-card side deck or something, depending on where I can flex in some cards depending on the matchup. So really, I think I want to see some when defeated abilities on the minions I'm going to play in order to use this, or some like really big non-elite minions. So I think it's just okay. Like, it's not like the ally on upgrade archetype is like the strongest thing to do anyways. I don't think this puts that up another tier or anything, but we'll see if there's some opportunities to use it, but not one I'm super stoked about. Next up, we've got Savage Strike. This is a 3-cost aggression event. It's a skill, so I guess Psylocke can search for it with that 1 upgrade. But Hero Interrupt, when you make a basic attack, you get +6 attack for this attack. This attack gains piercing. So so let's look at the efficiency here. We're getting 6 damage. Let's just assume we're using all of it for the cost of 4 ER, which is 1.5 damage per resource. Not really that great. We really like to see 2 damage per resource. If we compare to just like Uppercut in the core set, you know, nothing special with the efficiency on Uppercut, that's 5 damage for the same cost. So this is adding one damage, but adding the requirement that we need to be making a basic attack, which, you know, is not the hardest requirement to meet. I will say though, like, you know, if we're attacking a minion, you know, it's generally we have more permission to attack minions because it helps us stabilize and stay alive. Like, it's very often going to be the case that our hero's basic attack plus the 6 damage, like, that's going to way overkill that minion. And unless we're somehow getting overkill somewhere else, like, we're probably killing that minion pretty inefficiently. If we're attacking the hero, you know, we talked about this a bit, talked about it a lot on my various videos, but like, I don't really want to put cards in my deck just to damage the villain. Like, we've got lots of damage from our hero attacks usually and our allies. So I'm not really just seeing the place for this card. It's really got to be like a pretty all-in rush strategy, I think. And in that case, like, I actually think it's pretty decent. Like, giving an attack piercing incidentally, you know, that's something like the Hulks and Valkyries of the world can actually struggle with. And you know, it's reasonably efficient. I mean, you know, when you look at aggression, I was building a rush deck for the channel recently. When you look at the sort of aggression attacks or events to deal damage, like, you're not actually usually blown away that often with their efficiency. Like, Piercing Strike is, you know, fairly weak. Clobber is the same efficiency as Savage Strike here, assuming we play it as the first event of the turn. So I do think this is a decent upgrade for a rush strategy, but, you know, not the most consistent strategy, and not something I play a lot. So, you know, or at least in my perspective, it's not a particularly strong, you know, consistent strategy. So I'm not ranking it too highly for that purpose. All right, then we've got our first ally here. Yes, our first ally here, which is Two Gun Kid. This is a 3-cost aggression ally, 1 thwart, 2 attack, 3 health, Avenger trait. Interrupt when Two Gun Kid makes a basic attack. Choose 2 enemies instead of 1 and resolve this attack against each of them. So a quick note on allies. I've said this in my previous review videos, but I'm really evaluating these cards in the context of the entire collection. So when it comes to allies are, you know, the strongest card type in the game, but we've got lots and lots of really good allies already. So an ally has to, like, really be a step above what we've seen already in order for me to rank it in my top 5. But if we were just to say, you know, straight up top 5 strongest cards in this pack, you know, it would probably be a boring video because I'd always put my allies in the top 5. So by saying, you know, most influential, I tend to de-rank allies a bit because they're entering a pool of so many good allies already. And then, like, current environment isn't really a thing yet. We don't know exactly what that's going to be or when it's going to come about. But say maybe in 2 years, you know, if you're looking back at this video, you know, maybe Two Gun Kid is one of the best cards because, you know, everybody's playing current environment. And I don't think things are maybe going to go that way, but, you know, that's something to keep in mind. I mean, and so here we've got a great example here. Two Gun Kid, really, really strong card. First check we like is baseline efficiency is what I call it. You can call it like a vanilla test. Basically take away the text box. What do we like about, or do we like the hero's stat line? So 3 cost, 4 ER, to attack twice and then block is totally fine. So that we can get just from the stat line. But now we add in this ability of when Two Gun Kid makes a basic attack, he attacks 2 enemies instead of 1. And so this is just, you know, basically free value. Say we've got 2 minions in play, we can attack both of them. Say we've got a minion in play, we're attacking it, we get to poke a couple damage on the villain. And that's just really solid value, in excess even of the baseline efficiency. So really, really nice value. Yeah, I mean, nothing bad to say about this card, really. It's just, if I look at my top 5, right, thinking of influential cards, like aggression has no shortage of high damage output allies, especially ones that prey on minions. Like we've got Valkyrie and Thor and Gold Balls, Richter. Like, really, the aggression is not lacking for allies that can output high amounts of damage into minions. So look, this is a very strong card for sure. And we can quabble over whether I should put it in my top 5 or not, but very strong. And it's an Avenger. Avengers haven't gotten support in a while. There's some Avenger team stuff you can do, so maybe we'll use him in some of those Avengers decks. All right, we've got one basic card here before my top 5 list, and that is Yellow Jacket. So Yellow Jacket is a 3-cost basic ally, 2 thwart and 2 attack, but both have 2 consequential damage, 3 hit points. He's got the Avenger trait, play only if you have the Avenger trait. As a response, after Yellow Jacket enters play, search the top 5 cards of your deck for an upgrade and add it to your hand. So let's do our sort of vanilla test here. Yellow Jacket only gets to activate once before blocking, and so that's what we would expect from a 2-cost ally. So we're either we're 1 resource over or 1 activation shy of reaching baseline efficiency. But we do have this response of looking at the top 5 cards of our deck and drawing an upgrade. So that brings it back to baseline efficiency because we basically rebate 1 resource cost there. So this is another card I think is totally solid and serviceable ally, especially in the initial parts of the game. There's lots of Avengers that are looking to set up some key upgrades, like Iron Man trying to get his pieces of his suit, Black Panther trying to get his Black Panther upgrades. In general, just heroes tend to have 1 or 2 really important upgrades, and there's plenty of aspect upgrades we can play as well. Like if we're in Justice, we can play Skilled Investigator and some Overwatches. So I think the odds are pretty decent that we can build a deck where this is going to hit almost all the time. I will say a couple things. So like as the game goes on, our deck tends to get depleted in terms of the upgrade count because most upgrades are something we play and then they stay in play. So if we really want to look to maximize this card, we do want to use stuff like Overwatch that I mentioned, where they're upgrades that are frequently going to go back into the discard pile. Or just note that really we're including this for the early turns of the game where we really want to find maybe our few key upgrades, but then later in the game, right, it could miss more easily and make it relatively inefficient. So I think a solid role player, right, it's a basic card, can go in lots of different decks, it's going to be sort of considered a staple for some of these Avengers heroes that are trying to build up an upgrade suite. But I think just the potential to miss sometimes, and it's not really punching above the baseline efficiency, so that's why I've got it here just outside the top 5. And with that, let's get into my top 5. So again, these are the cards that I think are the most influential from a power level perspective. One thing I didn't mention yet, but this is taking into account both cards that might impact a lot of decks, but also cards that might have an extremely high impact in just a few decks. Kind of making a subjective judgment, weighing those kinds of things as I talk about these. So, all right, at number 5, we've got Aggressive Conditioning. This is a 3-cost aggression upgrade. Play under any player's control, max 1 per player. You get +3 hit points, and your hero gets +1 attack. So, very similar, of course. We just talked about Defensive Conditioning, doing the same but for defense. This is giving +1 attack, as well as those +3 hit points. So I ranked this a bit higher. I think our attack stat is one we're more likely to exploit and simply want to use more often. Maybe that's just balanced out by the resource cost, but we look at heroes that are trying to ready multiple times, especially in aggression, and if it's a hero who's got one of those upgrades that lets them ready every turn, or maybe we're playing like Battle Fury or Surprise Move, like there's some aggression stuff that lets us ready multiple times. Maybe an X-Men with a Utopia deck, letting us ready a couple times every turn, or ready once a turn, activate a couple times a turn. I think there's more ways to sort of milk the value out of this +1 attack than there is the defense. So again, it's just a pretty high floor card. It's a little bit low on the tempo side, but we can basically justify this card in almost any aggression deck that exists. Like, I like it maybe in a rush strategy a little bit. Because it's always nice to get some hit points if we are accelerating our damage just on the villain, maybe ignoring some threats or ignoring a minion here. So the bump to the hit points is always pretty nice. And then certain characters, like Quicksilver is the obvious one, who's readying many times a turn, and so that +1 attack is just going to get an incredible amount of value. This maybe tilts a little bit. There's kind of the brute force archetype where you buff your attack. Brute force isn't the card I'm thinking of. the one where you deal, the one where it deals damage equal to your attack, maybe Quick Strike. 3-cost card, deal damage equal to your attack. Now we're getting, one more thing to help kind of buff your attack stats so that can become a more efficient card. So yeah, I just think it's going to go in lots of different decks. It's like I'm looking for 3 to 5 cards to kind of fill out my deck. I've got all the allies I want to play, got my essential core pieces, just got to find a few other things I want to play. I think aggressive conditioning will very often be one card I can just fit in there because it's good solid value, like not broken or anything, but just like can't go too wrong with it. At number 4, we've got another ally here. This is Patriot. Patriot is a 3-cost protection ally with 1 thwart, 2 attack, and 3 health. Avenger trait and response: after you engage a minion, give Patriot a tough status card. So Patriot passes the vanilla test, right? Can attack for 2 twice and then block, which is totally fair efficiency. But then we've got this nice response ability to occasionally get some extra tough statuses. So even just getting a single tough status could be worth like blocking a villain attack, right? Which I say is worth about 2 ER. Now, a lot of the time, we might just want to attack right away, in which case the tough eats our consequential damage. So attacking for 2, that's like 1 ER of value. So say that a tough status, we can split the difference and say that that's like 1.5 ER of value every time Patriot gets a tough status. So, we're not guaranteed to be the ones like drawing minions during the villain phase, but even just getting 1 tough status, like that puts Patriot in really solid territory. And I've kind of ranked this highly for the upside of the potential to engage even more minions throughout the game. And really, this is a card that is really going to maybe not be like a staple in every single protection deck, but there's several decks where Patriot is going to be literally one of your best cards. So if we talk about all of the heroes that are like minion engagers, I don't know what people call them, but like Thor, Winter Soldier, Valkyrie, and now Tigra actually has a card that allows her to search up a minion and spawn it engaged with her. So that's a way to kind of force the issue and help Patriot get some tough statuses. So if we're planning to do that regularly with our hero anyways, then Patriot's going to get tremendous value. Even outside of those 4 heroes, Protection does have a strategy built around Come Get Me Bub, which lets you engage a minion, you heal 3, get a tough. So Patriot, can factor in there as well, help to guarantee getting some extra tough statuses. So I think really solid, ceiling with this card when built around or when supported with those heroes or that Come Get Me Bub archetype. Also kind of notable, there's actually pretty few playable Protection Avenger allies. So maybe this makes you a little more inclined to make like a Protection Avengers Tower kind of deck. Just a little something there. At number 3, we've got the last ally of the box. This is Iron Lad. This is a 2-cost basic ally with 1 thwart, 1 attack, 3 health. Avenger trait: interrupt when Iron Lad uses a basic power, exhaust another Avenger ally you control. Add that ally's matching power to Iron Lad's power for this use. So Iron Lad passes the vanilla check. He can activate for a total of 2 thwart or attack before blocking, and that's worth about 3 ER. So totally fine at first glance there. And then a pretty nice interrupt ability. So basically this lets him do the teamwork effect, which we've seen before. You kind of exhaust a second ally to add their hit points to Iron Lad. Doesn't give us any more value over a single turn cycle than we could have done just by activating that second ally. But we can sort of view it like that ally activated and then we healed them the consequential damage. So an ally activation is typically worth about 1 ER, like just attacking for 2 or thwarting for 2. So Iron Lad has the potential here to give actually 2 additional ER of value throughout each life cycle as he activates. So I just kind of like how the floor is still pretty high here. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here how I actually evaluated Patriot much a similar way, but Iron Lad we can plan around that a little bit better because we're just going to play Avenger allies already. But because we're meeting baseline efficiency, but then just exceeding that by a few points with this heal ability. I think some of the really notable allies that I want to play alongside Iron Lad are Blade. So Blade is a 1-cost ally who already kind of, justifies himself just for being a 1-cost card that can block right away. But then if we have physical resources to spend, he can activate as well. Iron Lad can let us just activate with Blade without spending the physical resource. So I think that's a pretty nice little combo. The other ally I'm really excited to use Iron Lad with is Hulk. I think this is probably the most exciting one. So Hulk, attacks for 3, but then has this pretty risky response where you have to flip the top card of your deck and, might blow up everyone or discard himself or deal 2 damage to something. So it's always a bit risky to actually activate with Hulk. But Iron Lad lets you channel that 3 attack just into buffing Iron Lad's attack. So we get the really efficient attack stat out of Hulk. Iron Lad helps us channel that into his own activation, and I think that package is just really nice. Thor is maybe another quick one I thought of like 2 consequential damage for 3 attack. So that's pretty nice to combo with as well. I just think, especially being a 2-cost ally, Iron Lad has a really, really high floor. Even if you only activate 1 time, like he could block right away. But there's some definite upside there to build around when you're effectively healing your allies as well. So I think Iron Lad is the strongest ally of this box. Then we've got number 2 here. This is Air Cover. This is a 1-cost aggression support. It is a tech, uses 2 fuel counters, max 1 per player. Response: after a minion enters play, exhaust this card and remove 1 fuel counter from it. Search your deck and discard pile for a tactic upgrade that can be attached to that minion and add it to your hand. All right, so this card is clearly, assisting the upgrades on enemies archetype. So we mentioned this a bit with coup de grace already, but when you do try to play this strategy, it's always pretty awkward because you've got to play some number of these enemy attachments in your deck, as well as some number of payoffs for that. Because otherwise, why are you doing that? And you've kind of got to draw both at the right time in order to really maximize that strategy. And so you kind of have a low floor to that strategy. Like say you draw a hand full of take that's and glob, but you didn't draw any of your upgrades, or maybe you didn't even draw a minion that turn. You can end up with some pretty awkward hands. So what Air Cover does is it basically guarantees you that at the very least, whenever there's a minion in play, you're going to be able to draw an upgrade that you can put on it. So this does a couple things. Obviously, just lowers your floor by helping you line up your upgrades with when you actually engage minions, but also it lowers the number of those upgrades that you actually need to play in your deck. Like realistically, we can play maybe a single enemy upgrade plus 2 or 3 copies of Air Cover, and that can be enough to just say that, hey, every time we engage a minion, we're going to get, it's just a minion enters play. Every time a minion enters play, we're going to be able to put an upgrade on it. So just a huge dose of consistency to that strategy. I don't think the strategy is the most busted thing ever, but that's a little bit there. I mean, because the payoffs just aren't that high yet, to be honest. We've got coup de grace. Coup de grace in this pack. Take that. Glob if you're an X-Men. Surprise move is actually a pretty significant one. Surprise move is really good. So we're making that archetype more consistent, but also I think any aggression deck might be open to just playing a few copies of Air Cover and 1 copy of Suppressing Fire, and this is just a healing package for you. You're not totally abusing the sort of upgrade on enemy aspect of the card, but you're just going to use this to draw your 1 copy of Suppressing Fire multiple times throughout the game. Kind of says, it almost says in a way whenever you draw a minion, you're going to gain 2 life or something. I think that's a pretty consistent just healing package that a lot of aggression decks could be interested in playing in. So I think that adds a really interesting element to these aggression decks here, or at least sort of just gives them another tool if it's a hero who maybe struggles with the survivability. Maybe it's a hero who wants to stay in hero form a lot and doesn't want to flip down to recover. This can be our way to make up for that and do some healing during the villain phase. It is a tech, not a huge amount of synergy in aggression for tech, at least that's coming to mind. Although I suppose in basic we've got Leo Fitz and Gemma Simmons. If we've got a shield character, I don't know if shield really overlaps with the upgrade on ally archetype too much, but there's a little something there. Tech, always makes you think of repurpose with tech, but that's a protection card, so maybe in like a multi-aspect thing. But anyways, that's air cover, so that's my number 2. And the easiest spot on my list for this video, number 1, we've got Hidden Base. This is a 2-cost protection support. It's a location comes in with 3 uses called Stronghold Counters. Alter Ego Response. After you change form, exhaust Hidden Base and remove 1 Stronghold counter from it. Give your identity a tough status card. So, this is just an incredible card. I believe I am not too far off in saying I will put this in every single every single protection deck that I play for the rest of time. I don't think that is that far out of the question. It's 3 ER for 3 tough statuses. If we put a tough status at usually about 2 ER value, that's like 6 total ER value out of this 3 ER card. Absolutely tremendous. And it's just like so much value. Especially living in a time where we have ready for a fight access. I guess the downside you can say about this card is that you've got to go to alter ego form. A lot of protection decks want to stay in hero form all the time. For one thing, not every protection deck. Protection nowadays doesn't necessarily mean like, okay, you're defending for everybody, because we have repurposed protection decks and we have aerial protection decks. So any deck that's just going to want to go to alter ego form any amount of the time, like you're going to play Hidden Base because it's so much value. But even then, in ready for a fight, like the play pattern is really nice here. We flip down on our turn, do our alter ego stuff. Ready for a fight, back to hero form. We've got that fresh tough status to take the attack. That sort of ready for a fight draws towards us. So that play pattern is just kind of nice. Ready for a fight helps us speed up the slowness of this card, because it is a little bit slow. Like you got to flip down, wait to flip up and flip back down. It's kind of 5 or 6 turns before you actually get all 3 tough statuses there. But I think just the value is high enough to justify this. So unfortunately, it is a unique card, which you may not have noticed. I didn't notice it right away. But then it's like, yeah, okay, it makes a lot of sense here how good this card is. So you can only play 1 copy in your deck, but legitimately, I'm going to put this... I could probably try to think of some very specific cases where I wouldn't play it. Maybe like a Spider-Ham deck, because he's someone who actually wants to take damage. But yeah, there's probably another hero here or there that wouldn't play it. But some heroes where it's like exceptional, Spider-Man. Spider-Man already really likes the ready for a fight thing, but just likes to take all these attacks and have a way to block it. I guess that's nothing too special. But Colossus is a pretty notable one, obviously. Getting tough statuses when you flip down and when you flip up, that's pretty satisfying to do. Guarantees you're going to get 2 tough statuses by the time you flip back up into hero form. So yeah, I think if you watched my previous strategy video on deck building, I talked about this term I have called super staples. These are the cards that I just default to being in a deck rather than out. Of course, there's no you're never playing a card 100% of the time, but when I call something a super staple, it's like I'm just assuming it's going to go in over 90% of my decks, and so I'm just going to start with it in my deck every time. This is going to be a super staple. If I know I'm making a protection deck, it's going to have a copy of Hidden Base in it, and it's going to be one of the best cards in that deck. So with that, we've talked about every new card in the Civil War expansion box. Let me know what you think. What cards are you excited for? What cards maybe have a use case that I missed with them? What cards do you think I'm overrating? And let me know as well if you're someone who liked me talking about the reprints. Let me know if you want me to do those again in future videos. But no reprints here today. And yeah, that's all we've got. Stay tuned on the channel for some gameplay involving these new cards, as well as games involving the new heroes. So, thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.